The soft spring sunlight streamed into the hospital room. In the white room filled with the smell of disinfectant, I held my mother's hand as it grew colder. At 11 years old, I couldn't fully grasp the gravity of what was happening before me. But I could painfully sense one thing: the strength in my mother's hand was fading day by day. My name is Sally, and I'm 37 years old. This is a story of how the bonds within a family unraveled and how new strength was discovered. Before my mother fell ill, we were an ordinary family, blessed with simple but certain happiness. My father, Kevin, worked earnestly as an office worker at a mid-sized trading company, while my mother, Cheryl, was a homemaker who took care of the household. We didn't indulge in luxury, but every weekend we always went out as a family. It was our tradition to take our old car on drives to the nearby countryside. As my father drove, he would always play nostalgic pop songs. Whenever Billy Joel's "Just the Way You Are" came on, my mother would sing along joyfully, though often off-key. From the back seat, I secretly cherished the sight of my parents like that. Sometimes we'd stop by a diner where I would order my favorite omelet. My mother would say, "Let me have a taste of yours too, Sally," and take a bite from my plate. These small joys were part of our everyday life. The change began during the winter of my 4th grade. My mother suddenly tripped and fell on the stairs. She laughed it off as nothing serious, but after that she started to get sick more frequently. At first we thought it was just fatigue. But as her hospital visits increased and late-night whispered phone calls continued, things started to feel different. My father's expression grew darker with each passing day, and our weekend drives became less frequent. Even the sound of chopping from the kitchen lacked the usual energy. The taste of my mother's cooking also began to change little by little. One day when I came home from school, I saw my mother crying in the living room. Startled, my mother noticed me and quickly wiped away her tears. "I'm fine, Sally. I just got something in my eye." Even now, I can vividly remember the forced smile she gave me at that moment. She never told me anything, but I could painfully sense the change in the air. My parents' conversations at night became whispers, and sometimes I could hear broken sobs. The day my mother's hospitalization was decided, my father sat me on his lap and tried to explain in a trembling voice, "Sally, Mommy is." But his words were broken, and in the end I didn't understand anything. Still, when I saw the tears welling up in his eyes, I realized something terrible was happening. After her hospital stay began, my mother weakened rapidly. The chemotherapy caused her once lustrous blonde hair to fall out, and her cheeks became sunken. Even so, whenever I visited, she tried her best to act cheerful. "Sally, are you having fun at school? Are you eating all of Daddy's dinners properly?" I tried to answer with a bright voice, but sometimes my voice trembled. And then, that Tuesday night came. In the sterile air of the white hospital room, the sound of the heart monitor was the only thing breaking the silence. "Mommy, wake up." No matter how many times I called out, my mother never answered. My father held me tightly, and I could feel his shoulders trembling. Around us, nurses moved frantically, but the scene blurred and faded in my vision. It felt like I was trapped in a bad dream, but this was reality. The funeral was held at a church near my mother's family home. One after another, people in black clothing came to pay their respects, and I repeated my thanks mechanically. In the flickering candlelight, my mother's portrait was the only thing smiling gently. After my mother's death, the shape of our family changed drastically. My father immersed himself in work, and his time at home dwindled significantly. I often ate dinner alone in an empty house after coming back from school. Sitting before frozen meals heated in the microwave, I would sometimes remember my mother's homemade dishes and start crying. Even when I occasionally saw my father, our conversations were kept to the bare minimum. Neither of us knew how to accept my mother's absence. One day, 6 months later, my father began by saying, "I have something important to talk about." I sensed a mix of hope and anxiety in his expression, and a suffocating feeling of foreboding tightened my chest. "Sally, I want to introduce someone special today." The woman who walked into the living room was completely different from my mother. She had long hair dyed brown, flashy makeup, and designer brand clothes. From the very beginning, her smile felt off to me. "Nice to meet you. I'm Millie," she said in a sickly sweet voice as she approached me. "Your father has told me a lot about you, Sally. From now on, we'll all become a new family together, okay?" At those words, something inside me froze. The way she seemed to so easily replace my mother made me feel an indescribable anger. But when I saw how happy my father looked, I decided to suppress those feelings. After that, everything progressed rapidly. Millie and my father began going on frequent dates, acting like a young couple, and within just 3 months they decided to get married. The day my father informed me of their decision, something inside me froze again. "I've decided to marry Millie," he said, his voice brimming with excitement. It had only been 6 months since my mother passed away. In that short period of time, my father was trying to turn a new page in his life. "I'm against it." The words burst out of my mouth in a harsher tone than I had expected. My father's expression darkened. "Why? Millie is a wonderful person. She truly cares about you too," he said. But I still didn't understand her as a person. It was too soon. I wasn't ready to welcome a new woman into a house that still carried my mother's warmth. "Have you forgotten about Mom?" When I threw those words at him, a deep sadness appeared on my father's face. "Of course not." "But we have to keep living," he said quietly. The weight of his words pierced my heart. That night, I cried in my room. In the photo frame, my mother was smiling gently, as always. If she were alive, what would she say? Thinking about that, I eventually fell asleep. "Sally, your father has the right to be happy too, doesn't he?" One day, Millie said those words to me. Behind them, I felt an unspoken pressure saying, "Don't get in the way." That night, I faced my father and took a deep breath. "I'll try to accept Millie," I said. It took more courage than I had imagined to say those words. But seeing my father's happy face, I was convinced it was the right decision. It wasn't an easy choice, that's for sure. However, there are times when you have to suppress your own feelings and choose the happiness of someone you care about. Perhaps this is what it means to grow up. The wedding was held at a luxury hotel, just as Millie had wished. Dressed in a pure white wedding gown, Millie was undeniably beautiful, but every time I looked at her, I couldn't help but feel the stark differences between her and my mother. I forced a smile as I attended the ceremony as a bridesmaid. Throughout the entire ceremony, my mother's photo was never once displayed on the altar. The new life that followed was more painful than I had imagined. Millie began changing things in the house one by one. The older, homey furniture was entirely replaced with modern pieces, and the wallpaper was redone in bright tones. My mother's keepsakes were quietly moved to the storage room. "Outdated things aren't necessary for a new family," Millie said, packing away my mother's cherished items into cardboard boxes. My father just stood by in silence. One rainy day, I secretly peeked into the storage room. From a dusty cardboard box, I found an old recipe notebook. Flipping through the pages written in my mother's delicate handwriting, I saw the recipe for the omelet I had always loved. In the margin, there was a note that read, "Happy birthday, Sally." Tracing the words blurred by my tears, I let myself sink into memories of my mother. Her figure standing in the kitchen, her gentle hands holding a knife, her smile as she let me taste the food. These were treasures only I could understand, something Millie could never replace. That night, I secretly brought the recipe notebook to my room. It might have been a small act of defiance, but I wanted to protect even a small piece of my mother's warmth. After that, I began secretly taking some of my mother's belongings from the storage room. I hid her photo in my room, placing it where I could see it, and at night I would quietly talk to her. "Mom, what should I do?" There was no response, but my mother in the photo smiled gently. Not long after the wedding, my father and Millie had a baby boy named Derek. By then, I had turned 12. The arrival of this tiny new life stirred complex emotions within me. Derek was an adorable baby, with round eyes and chubby cheeks. Occasionally, he would make expressions that reminded me of my mother. In those moments, I felt a strange mix of emotions. This child was undoubtedly my brother, but he had no blood connection to my mother. After Derek was born, Millie's attitude became even more domineering. "Now we can finally be a real family," she said. Behind those words, I sensed her intent to exclude me. Even so, I tried my best to be kind to Derek. I read him picture books and took him to the park. I couldn't bring myself to direct hatred toward his innocent smile. However, Millie didn't seem pleased with the bond I was forming with Derek. She did everything she could to alienate me from the family. She spread rumors among relatives, claiming I had mental issues or lacked social skills. My father believed her words, and I gradually became isolated. One day, I discovered that cash was missing from my desk drawer. At a family gathering, Millie brought up my so-called shoplifting habit with a concerned tone. "Lately, money keeps disappearing from the house." Millie trailed off, but I'm sure there must be a reason. Teenagers often have troubles they can't share with anyone. I desperately denied her accusations, but Millie's performance was flawless. With tears in her eyes, Millie pleaded, "I'm truly worried about you." Her performance drew sympathetic looks from our relatives. Afterward, strange phone calls started coming from school. They claimed that stationery with other students' names had been found among my belongings. I had never put them there. My father didn't scold me, but his eyes reflected deep disappointment. "I want to believe you." Those words hurt me even more deeply. Later, I accidentally caught Millie sneaking into my room. She was trying to put something into my desk drawer. In that moment, everything made sense, but I knew no one would believe my words. Derek's presence was the only thing that kept me barely sane. Every time his innocent smile saved me, I struggled desperately not to lose myself. Even so, Millie couldn't stand that. "Don't make Derek uneasy. Being around someone like you is a bad influence," she repeated. Millie did everything she could to sever my connection with Derek. My isolation deepened day by day. I had no one to talk to, and no one believed me. It felt like being trapped in a deep well. Eventually, I began avoiding being at home. In middle school, I spent my afternoons at the library. In high school, I threw myself into a part-time job at a cafe. When I went to college, I left home. Millie mocked me, saying, "What an emotional child," but my resolve was already firm. I refused financial support from my father and supported myself with scholarships and part-time jobs. Living alone was challenging, but it was liberating. I was able to decorate my room exactly as I wanted, without anyone interfering. As time passed, I got a job at an advertising agency. I kept my interactions with my parents to a minimum. I only gave updates on my life once every few years. As for Derek, we exchanged birthday cards a few times a year at most. Then, when I turned 30, I met Benton. I met him through work. His family had achieved great success in real estate development and owned numerous properties in the city. At one point, I was assigned to an advertising project for his real estate company. As we had more meetings, the distance between us naturally narrowed. Benton had a unique sense of warmth and acceptance. Even when I became overly meticulous from nerves, he gently said, "You don't need to be so tense." Those words gradually helped me let my guard down. When we started thinking about marriage, I decided to share my past with him. I told him about the conflict with my stepmother, the estrangement from my father, and the emotional wounds that still hadn't healed. After I finished, Benton held my hand gently after a long silence. "That must have been hard for you." At those words, tears spilled from my eyes. But despite everything, You've made it this far on your own. That strength of yours is what I think drew me to you." As he said that, Benton hugged me. After we got married, Benton never pressured me to take on household chores. Don't push yourself. Just take it one step at a time. For someone like me, who feared being expected to create a perfect home, those words were a great comfort. Sometimes, I wake up in the middle of the night, distressed by nightmares. During those times, Benton quietly rubs my back. There are no intrusive words or excessive sympathy. Simply being there and accepting my presence. "Family isn't necessarily about blood ties," Benton said one day, almost to himself. "We can build our family together. I want it to be a place where your heart can find peace." Those words made me feel as if a burden I had carried for years had slightly lifted. Benton never blamed me for my fragile heart. Instead, he gently embraced it, giving me the time I needed to heal. Sometimes I still get overwhelmed thinking about my childhood home. But Benton's words, "Take things at your own pace," give me the courage to move forward little by little. One day, a phone call from my father changed everything. "Sally, it's been a while. Derek is moving into his own place, and, well, the apartment is managed by Benton's company." I caught my breath. It was true that Benton's company owned some of the most prominent properties in the city, but I never expected my brother to move into one. We're planning a housewarming party. I thought it'd be great if the whole family could get together for the first time in ages. The moment I heard those words, I froze. Benton's company had strict regulations for its luxury apartments. Among them was a clear prohibition against new tenants hosting parties to ensure the privacy and peace of other residents. "So, Sally, I was hoping you could handle the catering. You'll take care of it, right?" For a moment I thought about warning him, but 25 years of humiliation held me back. This might be my chance. "Got it," I replied. "I'll handle everything." I placed an order for a lavish course meal with my friend Paula, who was a chef. I told Paula that I would cover all the expenses. Looking confused, she asked, "Are you sure about this?" I smiled and replied, "Yes, it's a rare family gathering." On the day of the party, I dressed in my finest outfit and headed to the venue. When I opened the door, I saw a scene that hadn't changed in 25 years. The relatives were gathered around Millie at the center of the room. "Oh, my Sally," Millie said in her silky voice. "You came. Still as plain-looking as ever. But I didn't expect you to come at all, considering your social anxiety." The relatives chuckled softly. My father wore an uneasy expression but said nothing. Sally, Derek called out to me, "Mom used to talk about you a lot. Are you feeling okay? I heard you've been struggling with mental health, and that you're not great with people." I smiled quietly. I glanced at the clock. The food would arrive in 30 minutes. "So, how's work going?" Millie asked with a sly smile. "I heard you're working at a big advertising agency. It's surprising you managed to get into a place like that. You must have been very lucky. But is there even a job you can handle with your fragile mental state?" I continued to smile silently. Perhaps mistaking my silence for weakness, Millie didn't hold back her attacks. "Well, I suppose you're doing your best in your own way. You're probably surrounded by people who help you out. Everyone must be sympathizing with you because of your illness." As the relatives chuckled hesitantly, Millie basked in her sense of superiority and kept going. "Your husband must have married you out of pity, right? I mean, someone like you, with such fragile mental health, it's not normal for anyone to want to be with a person like that." My father remained silent, staring at the floor. Derek stood beside his mother, looking visibly uncomfortable. "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just stating the truth. Am I going to be made the villain again?" Millie theatrically placed her hand on her chest. I checked the clock again. 15 minutes to go. I stood there quietly, a faint smile curling at the corner of my lips. Right on schedule, the food arrived. Luxurious appetizers, main courses, and desserts each made from the finest ingredients, custom ordered. "This is such wonderful food," Millie said. "But are you sure you can afford such expensive catering? Can your salary even cover it?" Laughter erupted again. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I pulled out my smartphone and called the apartment management company, putting it on speaker for everyone to hear. "This is property management," came the answer. "This is Sally, Benton's wife." "Oh, Mrs. Benton," the tone on the other end immediately shifted. "I'd like to confirm Clause 7 of Derek's lease agreement. Parties are explicitly prohibited, and violations lead to immediate eviction, correct?" The room fell silent, the air frozen. "Yes, that's correct. Housewarming parties are strictly prohibited. If a violation is confirmed, it results in immediate termination of the lease." The color drained from Millie's face. My father stood in stunned silence. "There's actually a party happening right now, with over 30 guests," I said. "What?" "That's..." Millie tried to interrupt. "I also have photographic evidence," I continued. "It's even being live-streamed on social media. This is a serious breach of contract." The voice from the management company grew stern. Derek, looking confused, turned to my father. "What's going on? Was there really such a clause in the contract?" My father, looking resigned, began to explain. "Well, it was written in the contract, no parties allowed. But Millie said it would be fine." Mom Derek's voice now carried a tone of anger. "Why didn't you check? You've jeopardized my lease agreement." Millie's expression shifted dramatically. "It's fine. Sally's husband manages the property, doesn't he? You're the wife of the owner. You can do something about this. It's just a family gathering." "This isn't merely a family matter," I said. "It's a matter of a formal lease agreement." My father looked at us with a confused expression. "Sally, why have you become so cold?" "The one who's cold is you, Dad," I replied, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "Ever since Mom passed away, you've never once thought about how I felt. And now you call this a family." Millie protested vehemently. "You have no idea how much we've struggled. Just because I'm not your real mother, you treat your stepmother so cruelly." At that moment, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, it was Benton. He pulled out his phone. "Well then, I'll have to notify the police. This is a breach of contract." The atmosphere froze. My father, pale-faced, stared at Millie, while Millie trembled with anger. "Sally, please," my father pleaded, looking at me with desperate eyes. "Just this once. Can't you let it go?" I shook my head. "Rules are rules. There can be no exceptions." In the end, the party was canceled. The relatives who had gathered left with dissatisfaction written all over their faces, while Millie sobbed hysterically. Although the police were called, they confirmed that it was a civil matter to be resolved in court, and nothing more happened that day. However, the act of involving the police undoubtedly served as a stern warning to them. That evening, I received a long email from my father. "Dear Sally, today's events may have left a permanent scar on our relationship as father and daughter. I understand your decision, but as a parent, I am deeply saddened. Millie has tried to accept you as her daughter, yet you continue to hurt her. Enough is enough. Please stop trampling on our hearts any further. If it means cutting ties with you, I have no choice but to side with Millie. Goodbye." Dad. I read that email over and over again. I felt sad, but I had no regrets. "It's over," I told Benton. He silently embraced me. In the end, the apartment lease was voided due to the contract violation. Later, Derek visited me at my office. "Sally, I'm really sorry. I had read the contract properly, but Mom kept insisting it'll be fine and pushed through. You even found me a new place within my budget. I don't know how to thank you." "Don't worry about it," I replied. "Benton worked it out with the management company. But there's one thing I've realized," Derek continued with a serious expression. I'm done blindly trusting everything Mom says. For 25 years she kept isolating you, and I see now it's been the same pattern over and over. She always said, "Leave your sister alone, she's sick," but that was wrong too. Derek took my hand. Things are going to be different from now on. I'm here for you. I won't let anyone hurt you again. Ironically, this incident strengthened the bond between me and my brother. 3 years have passed since then. I've had no contact with my father or Millie. Derek and I still talk occasionally, and he sometimes joins my family for meals. Through Derek, I've heard updates about our parents. Apparently, my father and Millie are moving toward divorce. The catalyst was the events at that party. It became clear that I was thriving in my career at the advertising agency and had never suffered from any mental illness. Benton's real estate business has also been very successful, and our reputation as a couple is highly regarded within the industry. When it became clear that Millie's rumors were all lies, the attitude of our relatives changed completely. My father began to deeply regret how, for 25 years, he had ignored his daughter's words and blindly followed his wife. "I believed everything you said." He reportedly said this during an argument with Millie. Millie still refuses to back down from her confident stance. But she has lost the trust of those around her and is now isolated. Ironically, she has ended up in the same position I once was. My father has contacted me several times. His messages are filled with apologies and pleas for reconciliation. But I find myself unable to respond. While I can forgive, I know we can never return to the relationship we once had. Blood ties do not necessarily guarantee love or understanding. Now, I have my own family. In these 3 years, Benton and I have been blessed with a daughter, Lily. She has brought new joy into my life. A photo of my mother is displayed prominently in our living room. Sometimes I tell Lily stories about her grandmother. Your grandma was a very kind person. When I say that, a warm feeling rises within me. Some bonds are lost while others are newly formed. That's what life is, I suppose. On weekends, I take Lily to visit my mother's grave. As I press my hands together in prayer, I speak to her in my heart. "Mom, I'm happy now. The love you taught me, I will pass it on to Lily." When the wind blows, the flowers on the grave gently sway. It feels as if my mother is nodding softly in approval. I have chosen to live facing forward. It wasn't an easy choice, but it is the right path for me.